New year, new priorities at the state capitol. As lawmakers return, we'll hear from a Capital Region legislator on what the focus for lawmakers will be this session.
Plus, a new year brings a new start to the budget process. We'll hear from an expert on the items most likely to make it in the state's spending plan.
Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. New year, new session in the state capitol. Lawmakers coming back to Albany this week after 6 months in their home districts. Yeah,
lawmakers in the state Senate delivering their message to their fellow lawmakers and, of course, state residents that affordability is going to be a key issue this year.
This session, our work continues to meet the affordability crisis head on. We'll tackle everything from the rising utility costs, price of groceries, to promoting universal child care.
Republican conference is ready to work with our colleagues across the aisle, with the governor, this session to improve the lives of our constituents and New Yorkers across the board.
Down the hallway in the Assembly chamber, the Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie also focused on affordability.
Yeah, the Assembly Minority Leader also talking about some specifics, what his party would like to see done to reach the affordability goals.
Assembly Republicans support suspending the state sales tax on everyday household items, broadening tax credits, eliminating taxes on tip, and capping the state spending growth to inflation.
I had a chance to catch up with Assemblywoman Gabriela Romero, a Democrat representing the 109th District, to learn more about her priorities heading into this legislative session. Take a look.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, I know session is now underway. The first day was on Tuesday, or Wednesday, I should say. But can you talk about what you expect to see in the year ahead?
Yeah, we are laser focused on affordability, whether it's utility prices, childcare, or affordable housing. I have a few bills, and my colleagues have a few different bills, but we're really trying to make sure that the cost of living stays low. Myself, I'm also really focused on the encroaching intensity of the federal government and the overreach that we're seeing there. So I just introduced a bill, the New York Civil Rights Act, that I'm hoping to potentially get in this upcoming budget, if not passed this session, so that people can really have a stake in our New York State courts to enforce their rights.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you could go into a little bit more detail for people who may have never even heard of the bill before. What exactly does it do? Sure.
So it kind of like closes a loophole that currently allows government officers to act a little bit with impunity. And to be super clear, it creates a state cause of action for everyday people like you and me to sue government agents, state, local, and federal when they violate our federal constitutional rights. And, that includes First Amendment violations for people that are violating your right to free speech, but also Fourth Amendment violations for an unlawful search of a person, their home, an unlawful search and seizure, but also Fifth Amendment or equal protection violations, unlawfully targeting people for tax audits based on their race or national origin. So we're really seeing across the nation right now people that are getting targeted, hurt, sometimes killed, and what is their recourse? What is the actual recourse there? This allows them to have an actual recourse in a more accessible court, state court, where they can sue those bad actors and get justice.
Is this something that you think Democratic leadership will get behind? I know on the first day of session, Andrea Stewart-Cousins did talk about immigration. Is that something that you think she'll support?
Well, my fingers are crossed. I'm hoping that this is something that could be in the budget. The governor hinted yesterday on various news channels that she's hoping to give people back their rights when agents are violating their constitutional rights. And I think that hints at some type of potential bill such as mine, the New York Civil Rights Act, or others that could potentially be, giving people this justice that they so desperately are asking for. I get emails and calls constantly. I'm at rallies and just on the street, people are coming up to me saying, like, what are you doing? What can you do to protect me in this state of government overreach? And this literally, I was a lawyer before I was in the assembly, so I'm always thinking of legal recourse, but this really gives people a true voice, a true recourse. It just gives just actual justice to people when they really desperately need it. So to directly answer your question, I do hope that we see this getting passed this year, whether it's in the budget or otherwise.
Now, I know affordability is a big topic that everyone seems to be talking about at the state capitol. When you talk about the specifics of affordability, what does that look like? What kind of priorities do you think the governor will be addressing in her State of the State?
You know, I am hoping we see something on utility prices. Last year, Public Service Commission approved a national grid rate hike in a way that to me felt non-transparent. A lot of people are reaching out to me this year saying, my bill is up $20. What happened? And I point them to the various quote unquote transparency measures of last year. And that is falling short. It's not good enough. And frankly, again, even the rate hike that they increased, people can't pay it. So I'm exploring with my colleagues, and hopefully the governor will approve, ways to put a check and balance on that to make sure that when we're in a literal affordability crisis like we're in right now, you're not able to increase rates in that way. People have different views. Some people want it a little more extreme than others, like I think one member has a bill that the assembly can veto, like a PSC rate hike. I don't know if I would necessarily go that way, but there's many different options. We need to find something in the middle, and hopefully the governor will approve or include it in her budget. So that's one option, is utility rates that I'm personally top of my list. But when we talk about affordability, especially in my district, in an urban area like Albany, I'm thinking about affordable housing, thinking about how can we increase, the density and make sure that it's equitable across all levels of different housing. At the state level, we have a part to play in that. And then I'm also thinking about, I'm not a mother yet, I'm getting married this year, very excited, but I'm also childcare. My colleagues in government are telling me about how expensive this is. I've listened to a lot of parents that tell me the intensity of that experience. So the governor did announce a plan that she has for childcare. However, as an upstate representative, I'm just making sure that we get the parity that we need in upstate New York to make sure that those childcare, beautiful gift, incredible announcement, I'm just making sure that we get the parity that we need in upstate New York for some of those childcare announcements that she has. Great announcement. We have some complexities upstate too.
Now, she also talked about cracking down on AI chatbots. I know she's been very active when it comes to trying to limit some social media aspects for younger kids. Is that something that you support in the state budget?
Yeah, I want to know more about that. I think that AI as a concept has some possible and productive uses, and I'm not afraid of technology. But I think as we look especially to the way that it affects young people and the way that young people are learning now, I'm worried about the effects on young people and young people's brains. So, I'm interested to see what she has there and the way that we can balance that between emerging technology and the negatives of that. But I have heard her say that, and I'm intrigued to see what she implements.
Is there anything else in particular that you're hoping she'll talk about on Tuesday on her State of the State?
Definitely. I'm hoping that she directly addresses the funding issues and Raise the Age. We have a really big problem with the way that our municipalities are getting access to the funds as written right now, and our youth deserve a substantive and robust funding of the Raise the Age program. And the way that it's working right now has a few kinks that really need to be figured out. And the way it starts is with the funding stream. So I'm hoping that we get to see a really beautiful announcement there. And a lot of different coalitions have been talking about it all summer. So we'll see. And the place for that conversation is in the budget. So I do hope we see a good announcement there.
Right, we'll have to leave it right there. Assemblymember, thank you so much. Always great talking to you.
Okay, thanks so much. Have a great rest of your day. It's Friday. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, happy weekend.
Happy
and congrats
Friday.
on your wedding. That's so exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I'll see you. Bye.
Sounds good. Bye.
So what will the state be spending all that money on? That's a question being answered by the budget process. When we come back, we'll hear from an expert on the big ticket items the state will likely open up their wallet for.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN.
Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. Start of the legislative session means the start of the budget process here in Albany.
The governor will kick off her State of the State address happening Tuesday, the 13th.
Governor giving some indications on what her priorities might be ahead of the State of the State. Kathy Hochul this week unveiling a plan to bring pre-K to more areas of New York City with the goal of bringing universal childcare statewide by 2027.
After the State of the State, the governor will release her executive budget, which will give more details on how she wants to fund her priorities. Then the state Senate and Assembly will rebuttal with their one-house budgets.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the budget process ahead of the governor's executive budget announcement, Blair Horner, a senior policy advisor for the New York Public Interest Research Group. I like to call you NYPIRG, which is easier to say. Blair, thanks for coming in. Suddenly, Jamie was saying the Capitol's buzzing again, budget time.
Yeah, this week was the first day of school. Everybody was back. They were all happy, and only the syllabi were getting passed out, so nobody really had to do a lot of work. Next week, the rubber starts to hit the road with regard to the governor's State of the State, and then following the budget, and then we're back to the typical legislative session.
Now, what do you expect to be in her State of the State address? I know affordability is a big issue that lawmakers keep throwing around. Do you think that housing will be a big issue? I know she's talked about it in the past.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the State of the State addresses that the governor's put out over the last 5 years now that she's been governor, there's certain themes that show up. Affordability was a big comment in last year's State of the State address. And so it's something showing up in the polling, and obviously the reality of Americans, not just New Yorkers, concerned about the increasing cost. That's one of the reasons why President Trump got elected in 2024, was his focus on the issue of affordability. So I assume that'll be a big theme that will sort of organize things. The governor has, in a sense, sort of a typical problem as she goes into the session, which is how do you deal with a budget and balance it and yet meet the unlimited demands of all the groups? You add to that the cuts from the federal government. That makes the budget more difficult, in addition to the fact that there's a structural deficit. And then thirdly, the mayor of the city of New York, the new mayor, has his own issues that he wishes for, and that costs big bucks, and he has a budget deficit. So putting all that all together is sort of the Rubik's Cube for this year's budget and session.
Watching the Capitol, not just our Capitol, any Capitol in the whole country, this is true. Election years, you tend to see leaders kind of act like Santa Claus a little bit and want to give away a lot of stuff, which ingratiates them with the voters, and then figure out how to pay for it later. Do you think there's going to be some most spending issues where they're trying to throw a lot of money out there, and because it is election year for Kathy Hochul?
The short answer, of course, is yes. It is Santa Claus season during election years. I think what the governor's going to try to deal with that is she's going to try to stick to her guns with regard to no income tax increases. So that's going to be part of the gift. But how, as I mentioned before, how do you put all that to the issues of the budget deficits, more spending, and put that all together without increasing income taxes? She's going to have to be rifling through the state's sofa cushions, trying to come up with all the reserves. The state has significant reserves, billions and tens of billions of dollars, and try to figure out other sort of interesting and creative budgetary ways to sort of kick the can to fiscal year 28 as compared to 27. So I think that's the way she's going to try to do it, is to try to muscle memory it by seeing if she can get through this session and figure out what happens in November and then deal with it next year if she gets reelected.
Do you think Republicans and Democrats will work more closely together this year? Because both sides are talking about affordability, as I had mentioned earlier. Do you think that there will be some common ground that we'll see?
Well, the short answer, I think, is no. I think the Democrats are going to try to tar Republicans with all of the unpopular policies of the Trump administration, because everyone's going into an election year in New York. And one of the ways that you sort of saddle your opponent with baggage is if there are unpopular policies coming out of Washington. Republicans did it to Democrats last time with unpopular policies coming out of the Biden administration. The Democrats are going to do it. So I think it's going to be very hard to see a lot of bipartisan activity in New York. That being said, you do have to govern and you do have to get things done. But Democrats have big majorities in both houses. They control all the statewide offices. I don't think they're going to be looking for too much bipartisan work. That being said, the wild card is what's going to happen with redistricting, because that is a clearly partisan issue fueled by the Trump administration's efforts to rig elections in other states, and then the argument that the governor's made to try to do that kind of stuff in New York. It's going to create, I think, partisan tension that makes it even harder to come up with bipartisan compromise.
We've already seen that one of the biggest names shaking the tin cup, asking for money from Albany, is going to be the New York City's new mayor. How does she balance that? Where I know he wants a lot of free everything, but a lot of that funding has to come from Albany, and she's got to balance the budget and also try to keep him happy as well.
Yeah, that's a real tension, and that's I mean. Every year, if the three of us were sitting down at the beginning of every session, we'd have similar sort of arguments. The state's facing a structured budget deficit. The state wants to spend more on programs. How are they going to do it? You add to it, though, New York City, and that makes it much more difficult. The last time there was a new Democratic mayor with a then Governor Cuomo, Mayor de Blasio, it was a sort of similar argument he was making, was to expand what was then called pre-K. And he wanted to pay for it with an income tax hike, which is what Mamdani is saying, for pre-K. But it seems like he's interested in the policy. The governor in a State of the States has always talked about the need for additional child care. I think this is the year it's going to happen. The question of how you pay for it is going to be the trick. And how does the governor and the legislature use reserves and other sort of creative budgeteering to make all the books balance by the end of March, beginning of April? I think that's going to be the real test.
Is there anything else we can anticipate from the state of the state? Are you hearing anything?
Well, I mean, you hear things and then who knows, right? I mean, the governor's rolling out her proposals. She's already started. She's talking about her top line items that have, I assume, the most public appeal. I think in many ways the governor's thematic will be affordability. And I think the fact that New York is a sane place in terms of the way she'll frame it as compared to what you're seeing in the rest of the country under the Trump administration. A key political objective for the Democrats will be to saddle Republicans with unpopular Trump policies. And I think that will be a theme as well. That being said, you always want to put a lot of good things in there, and there's a lot of issues where the legislature and the governor can come together on dealing with problems that don't necessarily cost a ton of money. The area of the environment, although there's been a lot of criticism on the climate stuff, there's other areas where the governor could do good things. So I wouldn't be surprised to see new initiatives coming out of it, but I think the big themes are going to be sort of an election year presentation, which with the idea that there's not going to be a tax increase and the governor cares about affordability.
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. Blair Horner, NYPIRG, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Happy
New Year.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
Blair will not have a day off from now till April Fool's Day. The unprecedented capture of Venezuela's leader on drug charges having an impact right in New York State. When we come back, we'll hear from the reporter Henry Rossoff as Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro remains in custody in Brooklyn.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Welcome back. Plenty of big news coming out of the Big Apple this week, with the president of Venezuela being held in a Brooklyn jail. Here to break down some updates on that and other things, Henry Rossoff, reporter, Pix 11 in New York City. You've always got your finger on the pulse, Henry. Let's talk about Maduro first. What's happening down there? This is interesting that New York City is suddenly playing a role in this whole international story.
Yeah, we had a preliminary hearing this past week in New York City in federal court in Lower Manhattan. There were pretty raucous protests really on both sides of things. There were a lot of Venezuelan nationals very happy with what President Trump did in capturing Maduro and bringing him here to stand trial for narco-terrorism charges. And then there were quite a bit of activists and people concerned that the United States would get drawn into a wider conflict, and also really questioned the legality of what President Trump did. And all of this falling on the city, on the NYPD, on the federal court system here in New York City. Maduro won't have another appearance with his wife for about 3 months. He did not request bail, but is holding that option open. It's very unlikely, though, that he would be paroled out while awaiting trial or get any sort of bail. But that is something that we might see next coming up in the court case.
Yeah, he might be the very definition of a flight risk, I would imagine. Talk about the new mayor of New York City, his role in all this. You were telling me off air, he was talking to the president a little bit about this whole issue?
Yeah, this is actually the first phone call he chose to make less than a week into office. Remember, he's only inaugurated about 7-10 days ago. First phone call he chose to make to President Trump. And it's an interesting choice, especially since they unexpectedly got along so well in the Oval Office. And he called him effectively to criticize him and tell him that he disagreed with the president capturing Nicolas Maduro and bringing him here to New York City. In fact, I sat down with Mamdani and said, why make this phone call something at the intersection of international affairs as opposed to, let's say, child care funding, which has been big in the news this past week, or infrastructure funding, or even ICE, which would more directly impact things on the streets of New York. He just said, well, I was going to publicly criticize the president. I thought it would be upfront for him to hear my side man to man, and he gave me his side. And he said it was a direct and frank conversation, not that they agreed, but it seemed to be an okay phone call, even if he did call to criticize President Trump.
Yeah, I saw the Mayor Mamdani was also talking to Kathy Hochul this past week about some funding for universal child care, those things. Has the reality started to set in with the new mayor that he can't just do this alone? He can't wave a wand. He's going to need some people to help him with funding for these things he wants to do.
Yeah, and we really saw sort of the tale of two planks of the Mamdani platform this week. He was standing with Governor Hochul, who announced not that she was going to just help him expand universal child care, which is an effort that's going to eventually be statewide, but is focused in New York City right now, but she's going to pay for it for the first 2 years, a kind of a smaller, I wouldn't call it a pilot, but a smaller program in year one beginning this coming fall, and then quite a big expansion 2 years from now. And in fairness, they have to build up a lot of infrastructure and hire a lot of teachers. And then on the same day, she sat down with us and said, I'm not mentioning free buses in my State of the State address. I'm not going to provide funding or direct the MTA to do this in my upcoming state budget. So on one hand, okay, Mr. Mamdani, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to work with you on child care. On the other hand, I'm not ready to work with you on buses yet. So you really see the push and pull there already in that relationship.
All right. Well, I know this is a busy time for you, Henry Rossoff, so we'll leave it there, let you get to your busy day. Thank you for coming on the show. We always love talking to you.
Great to be here.
By the way, if you got a comment or a story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. We're also on X at WTEN. Finally, on Empire State Weekly, we are keeping an eye on the Trump administration's ongoing investigation into New York's Attorney General Letitia James. A federal judge has ruled that John Sarcone, the man who had been investigating the Attorney General, was serving unlawfully.
This ruling disqualifies Sarcone from overseeing the investigation and invalidates the subpoenas he served to the AG's office. The investigations targeting James specifically regard her lawsuits against Donald Trump and the NRA.
Justice Department is pushing back against this recent ruling. We'll be sure to keep an eye on this situation and bring you the very latest as it comes in. For now, for all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray in Albany.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you next week.
Don't forget you can watch this show, Empire State Weekly, all over New York State. Here is the full schedule on 10 TV stations across the great state of New York.